Hello and welcome to Split Screen, presented by Insert Coin.
Hello and welcome to Split Screen, brought to you by Insert Coin. My name's Dan Long and I'm here to introduce you to the amazing people from in and around the world of video games. People who love playing games just as much as you do. Today I'd like to welcome Louise Blain. Louise is the creative lead at Blumhouse Games and has an amazing CV across the whole video games industry as a journalist, a producer, a presenter with incredible encyclopedic knowledge of horror games and video game music. Louise, welcome.
Hi Dan, thank you for that lovely introduction. And please, no knowledge is ever encyclopedic. That always scares me. But yes, scary things, almost a specialist subject, but the encyclopedic bit, it always scares me because someone's going to test me at some point. They're going to test me.
That's the scary bit, right? That's the scary bit.
That's the fear.
Bit was the encyclopedic bit all along. So it would be like your specialist subject, do you think, or mastermind?
Probably, but it would probably have to be maybe the Scream series. I think that would probably be, as you can see from various things around me, that would be, and you can't see my tattoo, but yeah, I think if you got drilled down, I think horror games as a whole would be so vast that I would get tripped up. So I'm going to say it would have to be Scream films.
There are an awful lot of horror games out there. So what qualities do you think make a good horror game, and what do you think makes a game genuinely scary?
Wow. So I think there's lots of variations to different fears. And I think there's a really interesting relationship between how we view horror movies and how we view horror games. Okay. And it's not because one is just sort of an exercise in jump scares or one is something else. It's because when it comes to horror movies, people like a lot of different subgenres. So you've got your psychological horror, you've got your folk horror, you've got your slashers, your creature features, you've got all of these, and they all make up the horror genre in movies. And you look at horror games, and something that's happened recently, which I really love, and in the last 10 years, but it's moved from, when people think of horror games, I think a lot of people think Resident Evil, they think Silent Hill, because those were those original experiences we had where we were sitting around like a CRT TV playing something that was far too old for us and we were terrified of it. And I think people think that horror games are just survival horror, but actually horror games now really are vastly different. I mean, you've got something like, I always just constantly think of something like PT, which is obviously, the playable teaser for Silent Hills, which never came out, but it's just this perfect example of horror. And it's really very, very simple. It's just it's not you worrying about ammo or health or shooting or any of these things. It is you walking along a corridor repeatedly, and it's the scariest thing in the world.
I was so frightened playing that game.
Yeah,
I don't, and you look back on it and you go, in the cold light of day, and it's like, there's nothing, like you say, there's nothing really frightening about this, but it's just the way it amps up is amazing.
Yeah, I think there's now a real swing to just vibe and how something feels. So while there is, you are just going down that corridor and it is just those vibes, there are things happening to you. It's really unnatural. It's really weird. And in the last 10 years, we've seen changes in that way. We've played the Amnesia games. We've played so many different interesting horror experiences. I mean, now we're looking at something like Dredge, for instance. Yeah. That's a horror game, and that's a cozy horror game. So that's something that I think the things that scare us in horror games have evolved, and horror games have matured and done really interesting things where they kind of push us forward. Something like Still Wakes the Deep last year, or even our first game. This is not just me blowing my own trumpet. Fear the Spotlight was out last year, and yes, it looks at and is inspired by those classic PS1 experiences. Cozy Game Pals, the developers, they love those experiences, but then also they've watched 20 years of horror movies since, and kind of brought all the things that they love. So the atmosphere is incredible. You don't know why you're scared, but you definitely are. There's things disappearing in the background. And they've even, while the PS1 retro style is a really interesting thing to play with, obviously Mouthwashing has done really interesting things with retro Crow Country as well. I think there's something that can be found in the fear of that now, where you've got those polygon wobbles, you've got that dither, and you're not entirely sure if that's something that's been designed so that you see something out the corner of your eye, or whether there is actually something there. So now horror games are playing with even the medium itself to find different ways to sneak under your skin. So I think horror games have just done this wonderful maturing, and because we never run out of stuff to get scared of. That's never going to go anywhere. So I find that's exciting. So it was a very long answer to your very
No,
short
no.
question of what makes horror games scary.
But I
But
think that's really
yeah,
interesting because you're right in that. Well, you're right because you're the
no, I
master.
don't have to be right.
I think no, you are. And it's fascinating that as a genre, I'd never really thought of that it was all kind of step and repeat, very similar games, even though they were different locations and perhaps played differently. It was all sort of surviving this horror that was coming at you. But now it's kind of it does play with you. It's like toying with you, and there's a lot of to be said for like how it's unnerving rather than frightening. Like it's not like there's a scary thing. It's like just building in the background, and you can't quite put your finger on why you don't like it, but you really don't. What was the game that got you into like scary games? Is there one particular one?
I think my first experience was that Resident Evil experience. I think that was, and then I don't think I played masses of horror until I went to after the original Resident Evil and the Resident Evil 2. Yeah. But then I went to uni and we played Silent Hill: The Room.
Oh right, yeah.
And I'd watched and played Silent Hill 2 with my brother. We'd passed the controller, and that had been the first time that I think that was the first time I sort of felt really emotional playing a video game, like genuinely, like by the end of that, just devastated. And I think so when I think about my sort of core horror experiences, it's sitting playing Silent Hill: The Room, which just had these most incredible experiences of just sitting with my friends, and we were sitting in these breeze block cells in Stirling University because they're all breeze block cells. And there was the moments when you were in just the apartment in the room, and every time you went back, it would be different. And you would go to like the door and you would look through the peephole, and something would be different each time. There would be someone there on the other side, which also did you see the new Evil Dead, newish Evil Dead Rise, the latest Evil Dead movie?
I know of it, yeah.
There's a scare in that is basically full on the room. Yeah. And the room also had like a great Robbie the Rabbit scare where you'd think you'd moved like some drawers out the way and there was a hole in the wall looking through to the next apartment. You would look and there was a Robbie the Rabbit like facing away from you on a bed, kind of hunched. And then the next time you came back, he'd turned around and there was a hand reaching towards you and just like screaming at this. And I think horror games, yes, you can really, really enjoy them playing by yourself, but horror games like horror movies are so much fun when played with people.
Yeah.
And just having people to react with. So I think about those times. And I think at the same time, not long after that, or maybe I think it was not long after that, Resident Evil 4 came out for the first time. And that just again, the start with the first time you saw the chainsaw with the guy in the sack, like all of that, I think kind of defined my horror gaming sort of. But so it was those survival horror experiences rather than anything else. That's kind of what I built mine on. And then since then, it's just kind of evolved. And I think my love of horror is in so many places. So it's in horror TV, it's in horror movies, it's in horror books, and it's games as well. And I think the best kind of, like, I constantly just want to pull from different places all the time. Like I want to be inspired by something that I read, because I think the more that those mediums inspire each other, I think the richer horror can be, because they all have their own techniques for sneaking under your skin and doing something to your brain in a way that you don't quite like. So whether that's, sound or music or just text scripts or whatever it is, however they make you feel unnerved and unpicked is kind of what I'm chasing all the time.
I think that's a really nice way of like that it's all coming together from various media. That's a fantastic sort of approach to it, to make it sort of rich. Like it's like a tapestry, isn't it? Like it's bringing in all of this cultural experience and kind of vibe that sort of makes it richer and fuller, and sort of, I guess that's what adds to the dread as well, is that you're drawing on things that you kind of half remember but no, or it's quite difficult, I would imagine, to sustain that as a feeling across like an entire game. I've written little short stories before and like horror ones, and it's quite it's a mission to keep that sort of building, and that's sustained over like a short period of time, like over a longer period of time. How does that is that kind of like a thing that sort of builds up slowly, do you think, or is it sort of like peaks and troughs of narrative?
It's absolutely that. It's a roller coaster. I think that's how you need to think about it. I think in order to be afraid, you need to know what it's like to feel normal. You need
Yeah,
to
yeah,
feel,
yeah.
so there's one bonus though as well. So if you know you're playing a horror game, regardless of the horror game, you know that at some point it's going to scare you. So you never really relax. It's like you're never ever going to be calm, but there are moments where that calm is extended,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
something scary will happen, and then maybe there'll be, maybe there'll be a fight or a chase or something you're reacting to, or something will be different, and then it'll go back to calm again. But you're never going to be back to the calm you were before. So it's
The
all
heart
about,
going.
yeah, exactly. You're like, okay, or if something pummels you repeatedly, you're like, when am I next going to be hit with another scare? And I think that's what's most interesting. Like I was playing the remake of Silent Hill 2 last
Yes,
year,
yep,
and it was remarkable. Obviously, it's now, I think it was 7 or 8 hours long previously, and now it's like 20 hours long. So
yep.
suddenly that's very, very long. But then I realized that I'd spent 7 hours just in the Woodside apartment, or just in the town, and then the Woodside apartment area, and then another apartment. And those were all terrifying because one, you were going into these rooms, but they did a masterful thing with those like double leggy, I can never remember the name of them, the legs on legs.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
know
you
what
would go
you
in,
mean.
you would go into a room, and one wouldn't come towards you. It would slink off. So you'd see it in like a gap maybe, and you'd see it disappearing into the room. And it does that perfect thing that so many perfect horror games do, which is there's a thing in the room that you need to go into, and you're not going to want to go in there. And that's like the base level of what's so scary about horror games, because if you have to push forward and you don't want to push forward, it's one. It's totally one. It's like, please
Yeah.
don't make me go in there. And then you go in there and you can't quite see it because it's hiding from you. And then you're like, oh, I'm fine. Then you come around a corner, and of course it's waiting around the corner like a lamp, and you're just like swearing. So I think like that's a perfect example of just like, yes, that's in a short period of time, but you're maybe solving some puzzles, but you've always got this awareness of what could happen. And I think that's knowing that there's an unpredictability ahead. The best horror games will always keep you on your toes and never let you guess what's going to happen when you enter that next room. And I think that experience can go on if you can brave it for
You can push on.
if you can push on for 6-7 hours. I find that I like to play in sort of slices of Silent Hill, for instance, because 3 hours was quite enough for
Yeah, yeah.
for that
There's
onslaught.
enough of the roller coaster. You
Yeah,
need to take a breather from it.
yeah,
Because I remember, it's funny, like how you describe that with weird sort of leggy monsters, sort of like slinking out of a room, and like, it's kind of the fear, but the fear's kind of in the future as well.
yeah.
I remember playing. It's not even really like a horror game. I think it was the first Resistance game on PlayStation, and there's a bit in tunnels where there's like a really long tunnel, and there was some sort of new creature that you hadn't met that had been spoken about. You could see stuff like notes about it, like left around,
Uh-huh.
and all you saw was just like a shadow run along the end of like a tunnel, like
Yep.
miles away, and it's like, oh no, I don't have to go
Why?
there, do I? Oh god, that's just terrifying. But
Yep.
I've never really thought of that before, of how that anticipation is like lends itself so well to that fear that
Yeah.
it's building it up without you even kind of realizing it.
Yeah. And I think so many, like, and that's why I love Jurassic Park, for
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not quite at Gav Murphy levels of adoring Jurassic Park, but it's one of my favorite movies. And I think it's because it was my first, what I consider almost a horror movie. It was
Yeah.
93. I was 7 or 8, aging myself. And you don't see anything.
Yeah.
You have the same experience that they do of not, you see enticing dinosaurs, you see safe dinosaurs,
Yeah.
you never see the raptor, and you don't see the T-Rex until the goat sequence. And
Yeah.
that's about halfway through the movie, and then you get all of the horror. And it's anything that's brave enough to hold on, where a character will literally tap a camera and say, are you planning to have dinosaurs in your dinosaur tour? And you're feeling like that. You're like, I've not seen any scary dinosaurs. And then when you do, you're like, oh, okay, here I am. Here we go. And the horror is real. And I think anything that can be brave enough to hold on to and just suggest, because the minute you see the monster
It's not
and the
frightening,
longer
is
you
it?
look at it, it's not scary.
No.
So you've got to, unless you've got, I mean, that's one thing that Silent Hill has, is really terrifying monsters. But the longer you look, the more you see the joins,
Yeah.
and if you need to look away in order for something to be as really scary as it should be.
Because it is that thing of like, the longer you look, it's like, that's a man in a suit. That's that's
Yep.
CGI. That's,
Yep.
because it's like Jaws and Alien did the same thing, didn't they?
Yeah.
Where it's like you kind of don't, it's all like half glimpses, and then
Yeah.
it's like, ta-da, here's the horror. You've been waiting for it. And I hadn't really thought of how that games do that so perfectly, because you have got to get from point A. Like most games, is like get from point A to point B,
Yep.
and then to C kind of thing. And then that is basically all it's doing, is like pushing the horror down the corridor slightly in front of you.
Yes.
And it's like, oh God, no, I know I've got to go there. That's no thanks.
But it's interesting because it's a careful balance, and it's something that I work with a lot of our different dev teams, and I think I said it on, I think it was the Backpage podcast. I was talking to Samuel and Matthew, that it's something that if you've been, like, when you're writing, for instance, you'll reread your story over and over again,
Yeah,
and you need to convince yourself that when you first wrote it was scary.
yeah,
Because when you first wrote it was, and it's like comedians have to remember that what they wrote in their thing before they went over and over again, it was funny once. And I do think that people have to be really careful with games, because, as a developer walking through the corridors over and over again, like, maybe you don't feel like there's enough being teased. Maybe you're like, I'm not scared. But you've got to think about that first player who's going into the dark on their own, and maybe they have a torch if they're lucky, and they are already scared. You just need to maintain that fear.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's that careful balance of, like, not showing too much, but suggesting enough, and bringing in, sound to really build the rest before you actually see anything. So I think it's a fascinating sort of balance of fear creation, because it's something you always have to think about, is that player and how they're going to feel the first time, and whether they're not going to want to push forward anymore, whether they're just like, do you know what, I'll do this. Yeah. Well, I was playing, I remember I was reviewing Resident Evil Village.
Yep.
For, I think it was Radio 4 of all places. and I was in House Benevento, which is the second, which is the doll maker.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spoil what is down there, but I remember I turned a corner, saw what was there, and just turned off the PlayStation. I'm like, nope, I'm dealing with this tomorrow, because
I don't blame you. That's a sight.
Horrific.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
But in a great, like, cosmic horror way, where you're not.
Yeah.
You're looking at something so horrific, your brain can't process it because it's so awful.
Yeah.
Something in your brain just swings and just goes, not today. It's like The Mist. It's like, your Lovecrafty and stuff. So I love it when something can surprise you like that, and just enough to be do you know what? Tomorrow. It'll be daylight tomorrow. I love this, but I am not a masochist.
See you later. I'm out now. So another thing that you're really well known for is your love and appreciation of video game music.
Yep.
What's your favourite piece of video game music, and what do you think makes that particular piece so special? But what makes video game music special, like, at all in the first place?
Well, I think video game music has to do so much work emotionally that we don't really think about. And I think it has to perfectly reflect your emotions at every moment, but it also becomes important whether the composer has created it just as is, or whether it's part of a dynamic engine. So whether, we've all played so many open world games where the only reason that we actually know that there's no more enemies to kill is because the music has effortlessly calmed. And you're like, there's nothing else here. And I love that. So, and I think there's a real art to eliciting emotion in the same way as film, but then elevating that further. And having those, perfect moments of reflecting specific areas. I think it was one of the Zelda games that did it for the first time, where you went to an area and the music around you, music of that area was specific. So you would arrive in a certain town and it would have a certain soundtrack. And I think there's just something wonderful about the fact that you're not even thinking about it. But then when you do tune into it, of course, this area by the coast has a more sort of seaside-like tone. Maybe the instrumentation's in a specific way. So I've always loved that back and forth and that relationship that we have with video game music, whether we're thinking about it or not. And I can't think of one single piece, because to think of a piece is impossible. But I have a absolute passion for every soundtrack in the Assassin's Creed series. I love them all. I love Austin Windry's Syndicate soundtrack. I love Jesper Kyd's Assassin's Creed 2 soundtrack, which is up there as like my favorite ever. There's a track called At Home in Florence that I just adore. it's just perfect. It's this perfect mix of like Renaissance, but classical, but also synth. Because when Jesper created those soundtracks, he knew that we were in a simulation. So while we were in Venice and Florence in Italy in Renaissance times, we were also through the Animus. So there was always really interesting synth layers there. So it always, felt slightly modern. So even when you're parkouring and you're running, there's a sort of modernity to it, which is amazing. So yeah, I love all of those different ones. I love Sarah Schachner's Origins score for Egypt. Winifred Phillips for Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. Like they all, because they go through historical time periods, they all take something interesting from that time, but then kind of twist it and make it modern. But there's a lot of like, big classical, Austin Wintory's Journey soundtrack, obviously Gareth Coker's Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Like these are all just big heavy hitters, but like there's so many even smaller games like Into the Breach, the composer Ben Prunty. I listen to that soundtrack all the time. I played the game maybe once or twice, but I listen to the soundtrack constantly because it's just perfect. But yeah, video game music is just a wonderful, happy making thing. And I loved being, when we were doing Sound of Gaming, the great thing was like composers for video games write so much music. They write so much music and they record with incredible orchestras, but they never quite, it's happening now, but they didn't have all the same concerts and stuff as film music, and they weren't considered to be as equal when actually they're doing incredible things that don't even happen in film. So I loved in Sound of Gaming just being able to interview a new composer every month to talk about their music and go really in depth with it, because it was just lovely to hear them and hear things that you didn't even had no idea went into their work, which was always very cool.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's such a lovely way of like describing that passion for it, because it is that thing. I've spoken about it before on this podcast. Is like to other musical experts, and it's like I'd never really, as much as I enjoyed the music, I'd never kind of tuned into it in that way. And then when I did, it's just suddenly, oh my God, like your eyes are suddenly opened to just the sheer amount of talent, effort. It's mind blowing how much like work goes into it that makes this seamless, like the landscape again kind of thing. When it perfectly matches, and you've got, particularly when it's coming in dynamically and the music gets less musicy, and because you've killed everything in an area or you've achieved everything in an area, that then it's so easy to take it for granted. And then when you do start thinking about it, it's like, oh my God, this is like just like absolutely magnificent that someone has created this.
And we spend so much time as well in those spaces. And I think that's why we end up with extra emotional, because we spend, especially in big open world games, we keep coming back to the same places, and then we recognize it by its music as much as when we enter it, and I think like I have yet to go to Florence and listen to At Home in Florence, but I am absolutely going to. It's on my list.
It's
a bucket list thing. I really want to be able to do it.
You've got to do it, right? That would be amazing. Oh, yeah, that would be absolutely fantastic.
That's if I can find my original Monteriggioni insert coin.
Oh yeah.
Hoodie from 2011, maybe.
Yeah, it is. So what's that? That's 14 years old. Oh my God, that's a while ago. That's a real blast from the past. They were cracking hoodies.
They were good hoodies.
Yeah,
I think that was my first. I think that was the first time I ever saw you guys. Was that?
Oh,
yeah, it was my.
Oh, that's so cool.
Little eagle peak on it as well. It was awesome.
Yeah. They were great. We do our photo competition each year. And it's one of those things, like you get like these little core memories that sort of like sit in the back of your head and come out and say hello every so often, is that we do the photo competition every year. And we've done it sort of since about 2012, I think. And the first couple of years, like pretty much everyone who entered was in that hoodie. And it was like, when you look back, it's like when you went to shows as well, like everyone was in that hoodie, and it was amazing. It was just like, why is everyone wearing our stuff? It's just really weird, and I can't get my head around it.
It was so cool though, and that's like, we spent all our time in Monteriggioni. That was the thing. We spent all our time there, and we felt at home there, and we spent so long. And that was why when we all cried at the start of Brotherhood when it got blown to pieces, and being able to, and also it was one of those nice little, you played, I see. because it was the one that kind of like totally passed as, oh, it's just a place. It's like, no,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got this little extra, like I get to wear
The
my
little
assassin
hidden
hood.
bit.
Yeah.
So obviously, a big part of your life now is working at Blumhouse Games,
Yep.
and you're the creative lead there. So what? Sounds like a really broad question. So what do you do? But it's like, what do you think are the creative decisions that sort of lead to the ultimate at the end, like user, the gamer at the end of it? What makes for the best gaming experience?
Well, I think primarily my job is to work with all our indie dev partners, and I can be an extra brain for them for feedback.
Yeah.
If they want to borrow an extra horror brain, there's zero pressure that they do, but it means that they have sort of an external person to help with narrative and world building, and basically using all of my horror expertise from building up over watching far too many horror movies, which suddenly become a valuable job thing, and playing too many horror games, and just being an extra brain for that. And I think it's exactly that. They spend so long in these worlds that having someone look in at at specific points is helpful, because it answers their questions long before they get to play tests or anything like that, or they're play testing at the same time, and it's just being an extra person for that, really. So that's kind of my main and also for us to, I'm part of the process of helping us build our slate as well, and finding the most varied horror games out there. So I'm an extra brain for our dev partners, but I'm also, we're building our unique slate of games, to kind of, we really want to show the kind of breadth of horror. That's kind of that's mainly our goal is to, or my goal is for someone who maybe didn't think they liked horror games, but then all of a sudden, they see, we have Grave Seasons coming, which is a farming game, but it's also a supernatural serial killer game.
Amazing.
So there's a combo, or we have, we're working with Sam Barlow, and Sam's working with Brandon Cronenberg. And if you think about what would happen when those two brains get together, it's darker than you can even imagine. And it's that kind of thing. I really want, people who would go and see a lot of Blumhouse movies, go and see Megan, but maybe they didn't think they're brave enough to play a horror game, when actually here's a flavor of horror game that you can be really into. So it's really just opening up that what constitutes horror, and finding those subgenres, but in games as well as film, and just opening that right up. And that's what I'm really excited about. And that's what we're working with so many amazing dev partners who are doing really cool, interesting, scary things, and helping them in any way is a wonderful thing.
And I think that's the thing. If the more people who play something, the more people who use something, the more refined it gets, doesn't it, over time? And so if you're bringing more, pun kind of intended, fresh blood of like players, like gamers in, who are not your typical horror gamer, they're going to want to try new things. So they might go back to like older games and back catalogue and stuff like that. But also that's going to help shape other types of new horror that sort of come out from that, like each one sort of spinning out from there.
Yeah, like we would never, creative vision of devs is so important. But so just being able to help and be like, if what's coming through, and how scary is this? And, even being that person to test of, is this still scary? Yes, yes, it is. Thank you so much. And I think, being there to support as a sort of creative partner is really, really, like, it's hopefully helpful for everybody. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So someone is sat at home or at work or college or wherever, and they're thinking, how could I get into something like creating video games? What was your route into that role, and what should or shouldn't they do to sort of, take those brave steps into making games?
Do you know, I think it's really interesting, because I think everybody has a very different route. So I've spent 13 years in games journalism, and as a writer and as a consultant, and I started off in Official PlayStation Magazine in 2011. But I think the only advice is, and everybody's route is different, is just, if you really love something, find your way to write about it and talk about it and make videos about it. And I think just showing your passion for something and doing the thing that you feel great about. I think one thing when I went freelance and I was a journalist, I found it amazing that anything that I loved, I would write about. I would write about horror TV, horror games, horror movies. I would write about true crime podcasts, things that I loved, and someone would be like, "Great, get Louise to write about that because she's passionate about it." And I think anything in our industry has always just come from a place of real love,
Yeah.
and I think and there was one thing that I think you're the same as me. Like, I love Lego. I think
Yep.
Lego's great. And Lego approached me and were like, "Hey, do you want to work with us?" And I wrote for Lego. I did some work for
Amazing.
Lego, which was,
I
but it
didn't
was
know that.
suddenly,
That's so,
but it was
so cool.
suddenly, it was amazing. Like, I wrote about their, because they did a Pac-Man. I
Yep.
wrote about a history of Pac-Man for them, and I also wrote about Atari for they brought out that Atari as well. So I wrote about the video game crossover with Lego, but it was a perfect thing for me because I thought, wow, I love Lego too, and now I get to write about Lego. And I think as long as you just look at the thing that you love and just find a way to do what you love about it, whether that's talking on podcasts, whether that's making videos, whether that's writing, or whether that's writing fiction or doing any of these things, I think as long as we just follow the things that we're passionate about and do what we can, we'll end up in the right place. Because I think there's so many different routes and there's no right or wrong routes. I just think that don't ever be worried that you're being too nerdy about something or you're being weird about it or you're obsessed with something. Follow your obsessions. Follow them. Maybe
Just
don't,
keep following
not
them.
illegally, just keep following them, not in a bad
From a
stalkery
safe
way.
distance.
Yeah, from a safe distance. Don't make them get a restraining order. Very different with people. But just, yeah, the things you'd love, the books, the games, the films, the TV, everything. Just love that and talk about your passion for it and what you want to do, and you'll gradually find that. Because I didn't know that. I mean, way back when, I wanted to be a film journalist. I wanted to write for Empire, and then suddenly realizing that you could write about video games, like that was just like, wow, I can do that. So I applied for the staff writer position on Official PlayStation Magazine, and I got it. And suddenly I was writing the demo. Do you remember those demo discs?
Yeah.
So I was still there when there was demo discs.
Oh, amazing.
And I got to write the demo disc page.
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
when I was little, when I was wee, my brother and I would wait for my dad to come in with Official PlayStation Magazine. And I would get the magazine and my brother would get the disc, and then we'd take turns. But so being the person that wrote that, that was just the best thing in the world. In 2011, I thought I'd peaked. And since then, I've done so many incredible things that I've been very fortunate to do in my career. And I keep thinking that, oh my God, this is the coolest thing I'll ever see. I saw, like, when I think about that, like, I went to the set of the Assassin's Creed movie,
Oh,
and I
amazing.
watched a stuntman perform a 120-foot leap of faith with no wires.
Oh my God.
In an assassin outfit. And I think about it. If I think about it, I get all like goosebumpy because it's just the most exciting thing. So yeah, follow your weird obsessions and see where they take you, because I'm still finding out where this is going to go, and it's amazing.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, if that's not going to inspire someone, I don't know what will. But I think that's the thing that's really lovely. Like pretty much every person I've spoken to for these podcasts, when I've asked sort of similar sort of questions, just comes out time and time again that there's like no substitute for passion. It's like that's the thing that drives you. You have to have. There's no. You can't fake that. You can't, you have to have that behind you to push you forward when perhaps it's difficult or, it seems like there's no way out. You need that. You can't just do it because you want to get to an end goal. You've got to do it because you love it entirely and all encompassing joy that it brings to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's got to inspire people. So thank you for that. That's going to be
I
amazing.
hope
so. You've inspired a whole new generation of gamers, of game makers.
Well, I can't wait to see what they make, because they're going to be amazing.
And they'll be on Blumhouse Games. That's So we're going to move to some AUTOFIRE questions now. These aren't, you don't have to answer them quickly. You can take your time, but they're just the sort of questions that you would automatically ask a fellow gamer to find out about what they love about gaming, basically.
Okay.
So what was your first video game memory?
Okay, so this is hard, but I think, so I didn't have a console until the PS1, but because my parents tried to put me off video games they let me borrow a Game Gear from someone that my dad worked with. Their son had a Game Gear and let me borrow Sonic. And obviously that was a complete disaster because I obviously loved it. And after that, I still didn't get, they didn't get me one, but I had this little handheld. It was this little diamond shaped handheld, and it was very on brand, Dan. It was Ghost Catcher.
Right.
And basically
I vaguely remember that.
You had like two buttons, one on either side, and you were literally a little guy with a net, and there were two cliffs, and the ghosts would come off each cliff, and you just had to go back and forth. Like
That's amazing.
that was it. And then I think about, like, we had like an apple, like one of the little tiny Apple things that had like some weird fantasy like RPG that I remember being obsessed with and not really understanding. So, and then all the games on Mac, like the shareware things, like Doom,
Yep.
that was on there. So I played Doom, and there was a weird game called Power Pete that I really loved. And one of my favorite memories before I sat down to the PlayStation was, do you remember there's a pop-up book by Jan Pienkowski, I think the author's name is, called Haunted House? And like,
it rings a bell.
It's green. The cover of the pop-up book is like a green door, and
Right.
there's a letterbox with a tentacle coming out of it.
Yeah.
Weirdly, on our Mac, we had like the interactive video game version of that.
Wow, that's cool.
And I remember the tentacle being animated, like, come on in, and you would go in and you would go from room to room of this, and you would just touch stuff because you were looking for keys to go into a basement. And it was one of my favorite early gaming memories was this little interactive haunted house, because it had all these great like creepy sound effects, and I really loved it. In fact, I want to find it somewhere.
Yeah,
someone will have put it on YouTube.
Right?
Someone will have put it on YouTube.
That sounds so cool.
It was amazing.
That era of like interactive kind, like, I know games are all interactive to a certain extent, but like those ones where it was just like click on this and then go there. There was a real golden age of those, and then they kind of died out. I guess when things moved on.
Yes,
but they were fantastic. Like when computers started to get a bit more powerful to handle that kind of thing. So, what's your favourite game of all time?
So I was thinking about this. I know these questions. So my favourite game of all time, it changes. It should change. We get stuck.
Yeah.
But my Assassin's Creed 2 sits at the pinnacle, torturing. Yep, sits like this before it leaps of faith off. And the reason for it is because it was the first, and I'd played games. I played PS1, PS2, but when I got the PS3, it was a little bit later. I'd spent a couple of years not playing, and my brother said, "You need to play this," and he gave me Assassin's Creed 2, and I think it just arrived at this point in my life where it suddenly went, here's what games are now. So it just kept getting bigger and more exciting. You went from city to city. The soundtrack was obviously incredible. Running across rooftops just felt like the best thing in the world, and it felt like everything was possible. I think it just kind of opened my brain to what is now obviously, just what considered open world games are, but it just totally blew my mind as to like what a game could be. And I still think about it, and I still, I replay it, and then I watch the growth of that series. And when I play that series now, I still kind of feel that DNA. Yep. So I always find something there that I'm like, oh, that's just like this. I remember that, I think there was Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you were crossing the tile roofs on that, and they almost had the same sound as the Italian rooftops from Venice. So like, every time I play a new one of that series, I'm reminded of why I love doing that. You're basically like, Renaissance Batman. It's great.
That's like really lovely to have a favorite game that's kind of, like you say, its DNA is in so many. It's had such a huge series after it, but it did sort of like influence so many other games as well. And it's kind of lovely to see that to have a favorite game that's like the granddaddy of it all kind of thing. That's amazing.
Yeah, my other one is the one that I play like just to put my brain in a specific mode is The Binding of Isaac.
Oh, yep, yeah.
Big, thousands of hours in The Binding of Isaac. I went deep. It all went a bit wrong. Yeah, all the way down to Mega Satan and beyond. Like it just, wow. Yeah, it was a problem. But the thing is, a good one. But Edmund McMillan, he just kept adding to it, so he's never finished making that game. And I remember I interviewed him, and I was like, "Do you know what you've done to me?" He's like, "I basically made it so it would go on forever. I made the game I wanted to play," and I'd shake my fist and say, "Damn you for this," but I can't because I love it. Just pick up my Steam Deck, Isaac time. fine.
And that's really nice to have a game that you can that gets you into a mindset that you can sort of relax with or like either relax with or hype you up or whatever, that you've got a go-to for that, because people do that with like reading a book or listening to music or watching a film, but like to have that with a game as well, I think is a really lovely thing to sort of, it's a bit more all-encompassing, isn't it? That, like you a full assault on the senses kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's something quite relaxing in a weird way for something that can automatically kill you and send you very back to the beginning, and that there are literal horsemen of the apocalypse and moving feces. But there's just it kind of gets me into like, everything is fine. I'm in control of this. I know where to put my bombs, and because of the nature of it and how many things have been added to it, you're never going to get that same run unless you add another seed. So like, it's always a new game every time you play it, and just keeps going deeper into hell. It's a wonderful thing.
Okay, so what would be your perfect future game? It doesn't have to be a game that is coming out. Just what would make if someone could say a game that you'd want to make like in the future that suddenly it dropped and you went, oh my God, that's exactly what I want. What would it be?
Well, this is so blow our own trumpet, but literally Grave Seasons, the game that I was talking about, like a farming sim with murder in it. That is just...
To be fair, it was pretty much, when you said that, it's like, well, that sounds like my perfect game.
Yeah. There's that's like, and it would seem mean to talk about our other projects unless so, but that is certainly, the perfect one. Everything else is obviously exceptionally exciting too. That's coming. If it has to be
two things, right?
It's got those two things. It's a Venn diagram of those things, and I understand why everyone is excited as they are. So
I think that's fair enough.
Perfect garbage or nailing it. Wish list now.
So what is your go-to gaming snack when you're playing games? What would you choose as your perfect snack?
So because I'm currently in Glasgow where we're shooting this, but I'm currently packing up my flat and I've been living in Los Angeles for the last 6 months. Turns out LA and America generally has so many different types of pickles.
Right, okay.
I love a pickle.
I've had a bad run-in with a pickle though. On a stream before that I did a long time ago. But carry on. Don't let me
What
tell
happened
you
to the pickle?
Your pickle love.
What did you do with the pickle?
It was I can't even remember what it was. It was just unpleasant.
Okay.
That was it was a charity stream we did, and I did it with Chris Slight, and it was with Jane Douglas and Andy Farrant from OX as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I had people that I really love and respect watching me have a
bad experience with the pickle
for charity, and it was a very, I can't even remember what it was that was so bad about it, but it was, I think it was hot. I think it was like spicy. And so I had milk to counteract that, and it was like pickle and milk and spice. It was like, no. Sorry, I've completely derailed this.
No. I like pickles that are not like that, and I don't have pickles and milk. I have good pickles. I really like pickles a lot, and but I also just like their just mad snacks. We go to Trader Joe's and get all kinds of flavored puffs and all kinds of nonsense. But yeah, I also think pickles make a good gaming snack because you have a fork.
Yeah.
Which means that you can automatically just go back without having to worry about what's it dust.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the grease is this is a thing that keeps coming up. Is that I need to combat, and there's so many creative ways of getting around it. Of like. Basically, people using various instruments, but a good old-fashioned fork.
A fork.
That's the way. That's why overcomplicate these things? That's all you need, right?
Yeah. No one's going to judge you for having a fork and a pile of pickles. Maybe people would judge me.
Well, you don't listen to them. Just enjoy your pickles.
Enjoy my pickles.
Yeah, just close the windows. Enjoy the pickles. Yep. So, who do you think is the best dressed video game character?
It is Jessie from Control.
Yeah, that's a good
Jessie Faden.
Yeah.
Because I love a leather jacket. And she has an amazing leather jacket. There's quite a lot of leather jackets in games, but she has...
actually, aren't they?
I think
disproportionate amount.
I think she has the best leather jacket in games.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a very cool... It's not none of your over-the-top Dante stuff. Jesse Faden's
It's just
jacket
like a cool. It's just a
perfect.
really nice. Like it's really slick, isn't it? That's the thing. It's like you don't. This is the thing. Sometimes it is just keeping it simple. Just works really well for a character, and it just looks really smart. That's all what it's all about.
Yep.
It's awesome. Great shout. Great shout. So, what have you got coming up, Louise? What's next for you? What's on the horizon?
So, Blumhouse Games, we obviously last June, we announced our full slate of games, and along with that was Fear the Spotlight, but there's still a lot of games to come. So we have, if you'll allow me, we have Grave Seasons coming. We have Crisol Theatre of Idols, which is the incredible Spanish one with the moving statues that we saw as part of Summer Games Fest. We have Simulation, which is a meta-narrative dive into game designer and various video games.
Wow.
Where things might go wrong. We are in the horror category. We've got Sleep Awake, which is from Corey Davis, who made Spec Ops The Line, and the guitarist from Nine Inch Nails, Robin Fink. And that's about a kind of, I wouldn't say post-apocalyptic world, but it's a world where if you fall asleep, then you disappear.
Oh.
Yep.
That sounds.
And it's what's left. It's what's left in the world. So that's kind of very sort of psychological and mind bending. And we've also got Project C from Brandon Cronenberg and Sam Barlow. So we have exciting games to come.
An awful lot of stuff, which is amazing. Yep. Make sure you check those out.
Yep.
And thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for being part of Split Screen. And thank you for watching at home. And we'll see you very soon. You can join us for more episodes very soon. And in the meantime, check out this outro from Insert Coin. Bye.
Hey, do you love video games? Us too. Insert Coin has been creating unique official gamer gear since 2010. From Ace Attorney to Yakuza, Cyberpunk 2077 to Astrobot. Represent your favourite games in style at www.insertcoinclothing.com. Split Screen, powered by Insert Coin.